I actually think that there's a slightly more fundamental form of unconscious bias, and it's in work allocation processes. And so I think often women as senior associates get to the gate and they just don't look as good as the males. And the reason is a dynamic of work allocation. And so it may be, we're about to go out and there's a young female associate and a young male associate, and I'm about, I'm going to be out late at night. And so I say, I'm about to say to the young female associate, I'll grab your coat. And bouncing around the back of my mind is sort of, this sort of unconscious issues, a young woman and stuff, and I may get into some protective tendencies. And I say, oh, how's the family and stuff? And then I say to the young man, grab your coat, we go out, we hit it off. We just, there's a natural affinity bias. He's interested in football, I'm interested in football, or whatever it is. And when I go home to my partner, I don't have the issue of saying I'm being out with a young female. All these, these are things these are just, human nature, right? And then over time, I start to work with the young male, I give him work, he becomes more confident, he becomes my go-to person. The female becomes a safe pair of hands that I give, what you could call the pink files, the contract, if it's in tax, he's with me when I'm negotiating with the ATO or, trilateral negotiations, talking to major clients. The female is finishing off the contracts, and there's so these dependencies develop, one around a sort of low development trajectory and the other around a high development trajectory. And I often say to lawyers, who has a go-to person? And they all do, right? Okay, is it male or female? I have to say it's about 90% male. And then once you start that process, there's a whole range of unconscious biases, affinity biases, familiarity, social structure. There's just a lot of stuff that comes into play. And then 5 years later, they just look different. This person, I start to say, the young male, Bill or whatever, he's got initiative, he understands, he takes risks, and the young woman, Mary, she's a safe pair of hands, but, and then the worst situation is when the young woman starts to self-label. She starts to say, I don't really have the risk-taking, or, she starts using some attribution. Now, all that, and I've seen this many times in conversations, and then of course I'll start saying, well, Mary doesn't really want to put herself forward. But what's not obvious to us is the historical process that led to this and the part we play in it. Keep in mind, the two of them came in as graduates. Now, the selection processes for most law firms guarantee these people are, the only difference really is the gender. The pre-selection processes, the interviews and all that sort of stuff. So you've got these people who are basically, two human assets are the same. One gets developed through a set of unconsciously biased processes. The other gets less developed through the unconsciously biased processes, and then people start labeling it differently. And so I think that is a big issue, and it's one that's quite easily solved, right? So we now, in one of the law firms we deal with, we say, look, and of course the other thing is it starts to lead to differences in salary. And that trajectory comes over time. So I think rule number one is all graduates should be paid the same from the moment they walk in the door. That's rule number one. Rule number two is when you sit down, you have a list of your associates and senior associates, males and females, and every time you allocate a file, you classify it as developmental or routine. And just, it's a simple conscious record. Now, in the case of one of the accounting firms we deal with, they're trying to work through their timesheets to provide a report. It turns out, I've sort of been surprised about how easy it is potentially to solve this problem, though people can imagine barriers. If you simply go through and say, look, in this area, what are the 10 major tasks? And often it's not even 10, it's 5 or 6. Which are the more routine and which are the more developmental? Which are the ones that if I'm presenting to the partnership to become a partner, which are the ones that I need to have in addition to client? And what are the ones that are going to give me client contact? If you categorise those, if you've got a reasonably, if your pay allocation's based on timesheets, it shouldn't be too difficult to bundle those up and report them back. So Bill's had 60% of Bill's time in the last month's been on developmental files, and 20% of Mary's has been on only 20% of Mary's. And those sorts of things, in the Aristotelian sense, you become what you do. So if you want to be virtuous, commit virtuous acts. If you want to become a partner, commit acts that look like a partnership. And so these are quite solvable problems of ways of getting around unconscious bias. The big barrier there is the quality of the timesheets reporting, I have to say. And it's nothing to do with dishonesty, it's just to do with lack of clear discrimination and things like that. But once again, there are other benefits. So it's the moment you start looking at this unconscious bias, it's more than just raising people's awareness. It's saying what are processes where it plays out and affects the differential